Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. Hokage-sama. We cannot give the funds to a little project the hospital wants to do. We've pushed the repairs back for going on a year now. Imagine the homeless people if we don't start building right away. Naruto sighed, rubbing his temples. They weren't listening to him, and he was starting to get really agitated. Mitsuru, I don't think it will be too bad if we take some of the funding and put it into the hospital. An older woman across the room said, taking a sip of her tea. No, I have told that damnable hospital staff that we will do what we can with what we have. Right now, the building comes first. Mitsuru snapped, slamming his fist on the table, making Naruto's cup of tea shake. Naruto looked at the older man, blue eyes narrowing. Mitsuru, if I don't let the funds go to this clinical trial, a patient of the age of 9 will die in less than 2 months. Not only that, but spinal grafting is something a lot of shinobi will inevitably get one day, if they're injured around their spinal cord. Which is approximately. Naruto grabbed a file that he had stuck on top of his stack of papers. Flipping through the pages, Naruto found the one he needed. Okay. It is approximately 20% of the patients that are seen. Chakra can't heal this kind of injury, just like it couldn't heal my arm. Yes, it closed the wound when it was blown off, but it didn't get me my arm back. Mitsuru grunted, holding his hand out, asking for the folder Naruto was looking through. Grinning, Naruto handed it over. An hour later, after much consideration, arguments, and a vicious snarl from Naruto's end, they had decided to divide up the shares and give 50% to the hospital, and build what they needed to with the other 50%. It wasn't exactly a loss, but Naruto knew it wasn't really a win either. Damn. Sitting back in his desk, Naruto leaned back, eyes heavy with fatigue, head pounding from the headache that had sprung to life after that ridiculous meeting. Why were old people so hard to reason with? It was like their mission in life. Naruto. A voice called out to him, and he looked at the door, seeing Shikamaru. The blonde nodded, beckoning him in. Welcome to the 7th circle of hell, Shikamaru. Check-in time is now, check-out time is never. The assistant stared at the Hokage for a second, shrugging his shoulder, not getting the joke. Talk about sleep-deprived, he mumbled, shoving his hands in his pockets. Naruto grunted at that, slumping down in his seat, wanting to pass out across all the papers loitering his personal space. Well, how did the meeting go this morning? Not exactly what I hoped for, but, you know, it's something. They gave me half of the funds, and they're going to push forward with the building. Shikamaru nodded, fumbling in his pocket for his pack of cigarettes, flicking open his trusty lighter, blowing a puff of smoke out. Did the council say anything else? Naruto nodded. They want to have a dinner with the hospital staff, mostly Sakura and her team. They want to hold it in a couple of days. Shikamaru sighed, knowing what that meant. Is it in a formal place? Do I need to dress up? Probably. The young Hokage mumbled, yawning loudly. Dad. A younger male's voice grazed Naruto's ears. Bolt. Dottie. A younger female's was right behind him. 2 children then burst into his office, having a race it seemed, both shoving through, tripping over each other. Bolt. Himawari. What did I tell you about running in the hallways? A softer voice was behind them. Hinata. Naruto felt a jerk of guilt crush him. He hadn't been able to look at her properly since what happened in the bedroom. Naruto-kun, I hope we're not bothering you. Bolt and Himawari just wanted to say hi before they go over to my father's house for the evening. He looked up at her, and she blushed, looking away. Feeling guilt and a sense of something akin to dread, Naruto leaned down and ruffled Bolt's hair, who huffed, glaring at him. Do you mind, Dad? Naruto gave him a rueful smile and turned to Himawari. Be good for Grandpa. You know how moody he can be. Will do, Daddy, she said, giving his waist a hug. Naruto smiled softly, patting her back. After Bolt and Himawari left, Hinata stayed behind and looked at him, folding her hands together, blushing again. I'm making dinner tonight. Could you be home? That is, if you're not too busy. She asked timidly. Naruto felt his fingers tighten under the table, his thoughts going back to the scene in their bedroom a week ago. What he had done was shameful, and slightly embarrassing. Naruto-kun. Her voice broke through his thoughts, and he looked up, plastering a fake grin on his face. Of course I'll be there, Hinata. Sakura was washing dishes at her home, thoughts solely on one person. Well, two really. Sarada and Naruto. Her daughter had been back home for a few days now, and Sakura was elated. Joking around with Sarada, training, and both of them researching on spinal grafting had helped steer her thoughts away from a certain blonde. And helped lift her spirits. Mom. Her daughter's voice snapped her out of her trance, and she turned, wiping her hands on a towel beside her. Yes, Sarada, she answered, smiling. Dark eyes accessed her, a brow raising. Sakura felt her heart lurch. Sometimes Sarada looked so much like Sasuke, it was almost frightening. You've been acting strange, Mom. Is everything alright? She asked, folding her arms across her chest, ing her head to the side. No, things weren't alright. What she was feeling so strongly was not alright. Instead, Sakura smiled gently, tucking a stray piece of hair behind her daughter's ear. I'm fine, Sarada. Just really concerned about this clinical trial. If it fails, a family loses their child. If it fails, the hospital is going to take a verbal lashing like you wouldn't believe. Well, that's if the Hokage can get the council to let us use the funds. Sarada smiled. The seventh can do anything, Mom. I'm sure he'll help you out. Sakura smiled at her child, thoughts drifting to Naruto again. Speak of the devil and he will appear, apparently. Sakura was preparing supper when the knock on the door sounded through the house. I'll get it, Sarada called out. Naruto stuffed his hands in his pockets, sighing loudly. Maybe he should wait for tomorrow. He didn't want to bother their dinner. Before he could think any more on leaving though, the door opened and Sarada popped her head out, smiling widely at the visitor. Lord Seventh. Come in. When Sakura heard her daughter's voice, she felt her heart speed up and her stomach clench painfully. Mom's in the kitchen. Do you need to speak to her? She asked the tall blonde. Naruto scratched his whiskered cheek, smiling down at the Uchiha. Yes, actually. I won't interrupt your dinner, I'll only be here for a few minutes. Sarada shook her head and blushed. You're not interrupting, Lord Seventh. Mom isn't finished cooking yet. Come on. Sakura felt her hands shake, thankfully getting it together just in time before they popped up in the kitchen. Evening, Hokage-sama. Sakura greeted, wiping her hands on the apron she was wearing. Sakura. Naruto answered back, the both of them a little awkward. Sarada. Go wash up. Dinner's almost ready. Oh, and I know you haven't completed that assignment that your sensei gave you to complete this afternoon. Am I right in my assumption? She raised a brow at her daughter, who flushed hotly. Fine. If I don't see you before you leave Lord Seventh, bye. And she waved, leaving to go to her bedroom. Naruto watched her go for a second, then turned back to the Pinkett who was moving about the kitchen, trying to keep her nerves at bay. I won't be intruding for too long. I just wanted to tell you what happened with the council today. I know how impatient you can be. Sakura scoffed at the comment. Impatient? That's the pot calling the kettle black. Sakura said to him, watching his face split into an awkward smile. I am the god of patience. He said, removing his cloak. You're the god of something, but it's not patience. She remarked, sarcastically. Naruto's blue eyes took on a gleam and he winked at her. Face reddening brightly, Sakura turned around, making Naruto smirk at her reaction. Silence. Well, Sakura started, sounding hoarse, finding her throat dry. Slapping herself in her mind, she cleared it, and tried again. Do you mean to leave me waiting on pins and needles, Hokage-sama? She asked, feeling the tension start to swirl around the room, leaving her almost breathless because of its weight. I have an answer regarding the clinical trial. Sakura turned around quickly, hands fiddling with the tie of the apron, trying to get the damnable thing off so she could sit and talk about the hospital. It was in knots though. Like she was having trouble, he asked, humor lacing his voice. No. Just continue with what you were saying, Naruto. Nodding, he continued to watch her struggle, her green eyes slanted. The council agreed to give the hospital half of the funds, but they wouldn't budge on the full funds. I tried every way I could, believe me. I'm surprised I got what I did. Misuru is a grade A. Sakura felt her heart leap that he had gone so far to help her. I hope you didn't step on too many toes, Naruto. She said to him, envisioning him standing on the council's table, giving a long speech about helping others. His talk no jutsu. Rubbing his neck, he gave her a smile, nah. You know me, I have master powers of persuasion. The words weren't UAL, but Sakura felt heat course through her stomach at what he had just said nonetheless. Sakura, honestly, you can't get the knot undone, let me help you. He said, smiling at her still trying to get the apron off. He was up on his feet, making his way to her. Sakura gulped, pressing her back against the sink. I'm fine, she said, a little too loudly, eyes darting to the kitchen entryway, making sure Sarada didn't come running out. Naruto raised a brow, stepping closer to her now, finger twirling, signaling her to turn around. Sakura glared, refusing, but then he stepped closer. Damn it. Biting her lip, Sakura finally turned, feeling Naruto's hands work at the knot, hearing him chuckle, his hot breath tickling the nape of her neck. Damn, Sakura. This thing is knotted to hell and back. You definitely made it a lot worse. Blushing, she crossed her arms. Then, a thought hit her like a bullet. This is what happened in the bar bathroom. Oh Kami. She would think about that right now. Naruto had managed to get some of the knot undone, his mind flashing to inappropriate thoughts, trying to shove them back in the recesses of his brain, where they needed to stay. He tried to focus solely on what he was doing, but, his eyes strayed to her lean back, shoulders tensed, head hunched. Then, to her hips, the flare of them left and that he would never get over. Motherhood had been good to her, leaving curves in all the right places. Finally, he got the knot fully untangled, but his hands stayed where they were, fingers sliding down the end expanse of her spine, then to the left to touch her hip bones lightly, feeling her tense. Don't, she said, voice quivering. Naruto stepped closer to her, mind fuzzy, heat shooting to his groin. Sakura felt her thighs shake, hands gripping the counter as if it were a lifeline. Leaning forward, Naruto entrapped her hands with his, broad chest pressed against her back, head nuzzling her neck, lips on her skin. We can't do this out here. Sarada, she whimpered, feeling herself become more and more aroused. Pressing his groin into her backside, Naruto drew his tongue across her skin lazily, earning a small gasp. I can sense her chakra. He whispered, lips now encasing the shell of her ear, hips moving against her butt. Sakura moaned, knuckles white now. Naruto let go of her right hand, sliding his own to her front, wasting no time. Dipping his hand into her pants, he cupped her pulsating womanhood through her underwear, growling into her ear. So wet already, Sakura. The Kunyachi couldn't form the words to answer. Her brain wasn't functioning. Naruto smirked, rubbing her through the fabric, his manhood so hard against her that he knew his orgasm was within arm's reach. And judging by how she was arching against him, so was hers. Naruto. She gasped, hips moving with his, pleasure shooting up through her bosom, leaving her breathless. Grunting softly, he saw her left hand reach low to grab his wrist, whether to stop him, or make him move faster, he wasn't sure. Growling, he grabbed her wrist, forcing it back to where it had been on the counter. Pinning one hand there, his eyes moved to her right, it was staying in place. Good. Please. He heard her whimper, the sound sending him thrusting against her faster and harder, his hips pressing, shaking, demanding, encouraging hers to move with his. Kami. Sakura felt completely overwhelmed, the pleasure making her quake, her and stomach shuddering as her orgasm approached faster and faster, his hand never stopping, never relenting, its sole purpose to wrench the pleasure from her body. And it was doing a fine job. She wasn't sure what was better, feeling his dexterous fingers glide round and round her, or feeling how he rocked his hardened manhood in the crease of her. This was filthily erotic, and Sakura lost herself in the sensations. The heat started in Naruto's balls, washing through his pelvis, then moving outward towards his manhood, making him sloppy with his thrusting, hand tightening around her fingers. I'm coming, he whispered thickly, teeth clamping onto her neck, hips jerking raggedly against her. Sakura felt the explosion once he sunk his teeth into her flesh and she threw her head back, the scream that threatened to spill forth getting stuck in her throat. Her hips rammed into his fingers, her pulsating. The blonde felt her shaking, her orgasm hitting her forcefully. His left hand leaving her hand, cupping her mouth, right hand continuing to pleasure her, spasm after spasm rocking through her, harsh panting hitting the skin of his palm. Sakura felt she would pass out, the second orgasm intense and unexpected. Finally, the waves ebbed off and Sakura slumped against him, heart almost beating out of her chest. Naruto gave her cheek a kiss, removing his hand from her pants, wiping his finger on the towel beside the sink. Sakura straightened, fixing herself up, watching as Naruto did the same thing, his face a little flushed. Silence. Do I need to know anything else about the funding of the hospital? She whispered to him, washing her hands, calling Sarada in. Yes. In a couple of days the council wants to have a sit-down dinner with you in the lab that will be assisting in the clinical trial. They want to discuss a couple of things with you and your team. Shikamaru and I will there as well. And probably Hinata. Sakura felt her heart lurch, but she pushed it aside, just nodding curtly. Naruto saw the flash of pain cover her face, and he stepped towards her, but stopped abruptly, seeing Sarada barge into the room. Wanting to say more to her, but not having the chance to now, Naruto sighed internally, turning to the Kunyachi. Well then, Sakura, I hope I didn't take up too much of your time. Sakura glared at him, her cheeks reddening profusely. No, she said, taking the food off the stove, grabbing some plates out of the cabinet, laying them on the table, side-eyeing him. Naruto nodded at her, giving Sarada a small smile, putting his sandals on, then leaving. It was 7 o'clock when he got to his home. Hinata was still cooking, the house quiet. Oh, Naruto-kun. Hello, she said, giving him a peck on the cheek. Naruto smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Also, he needed to change out of the pants he was wearing, for obvious reasons. Smells good. Let me go freshen up a little bit, I've been sitting in that musty office all day long. He said, feeling his chest tighten at the half-lie he just told her. Smiling sweetly, Hinata nodded, pulling back from him. Naruto undressed, throwing his clothes into the washing machine, feeling a little bit of the burden leave him. But the guilt gnawed at him still, falling over him like a cloak he couldn't remove. Sigh. There would come a time where he would have to tell Hinata. And Sakura would have to tell Sasuke. If she ever saw him again, that is. It had been months since Naruto had heard from the Uchiha, and he had no idea where he was. It was strange the way guilt worked. He felt it when he was away from Sakura, but he didn't feel it when he. Shaking his head, dismissing those thoughts, he redressed, and descended back down the stairs, inhaling the delicious smell of ramen. Ramen with pork slices. His favorite. She always made his favorite, and Naruto loved that, but it would be nice if she stepped outside of the box and did something for herself every once in a while. Hinata had given up her kunoichi status and settled down with him, and it made Naruto feel bad. He never wanted her to do that. He never wanted her to have to give anything up. Both of the children were surprises, welcome surprises, but Naruto felt like it tied Hinata to the house, to the cooking, to the groceries. And the both of them danced around this topic all the time. He had tried on numerous occasions asking Hinata if she wanted to get back into the working force. She would always look at him a little wounded, and say nothing. Which was aggravating. He wanted her to have an opinion. She had always been meek. Meek and gentle. But meek all the same. There was nothing wrong with that, but Naruto always felt like she wanted something more. Like her passion was just below the surface, she just wouldn't let it out. Why? He wasn't sure. Sitting down, he clapped his hands together, mumbling a thanks, then reached across the table and grabbed his wife's hand, thanking her as well. Hinata smiled, handing him a pair of chopsticks. They ate in silence for a few minutes before Hinata spoke up. Naruto-kun. The blonde was shoveling noodles into his mouth, when he glanced up at her, blue eyes focused. The raven-haired woman looked down, chewing on her bottom lip, face turning a blood red. I wanted to ask you, if you wanted. Naruto felt himself internally sigh. Why was she always so nervous around him? Swallowing his food, he set his chopsticks down, wiping his mouth free of the ramen juices. What is it, Hinata? Squeezing her eyes shut tightly, Hinata opened her mouth. Do you want another child? Naruto felt a deep chuckle in his chest, which he snarled at internally. Stupid Kurama and his vicious humor. Silence. Naruto sighed, placing his elbows on the table, looking at her narrowly. Where did this come from, Hinata? His wife put her chopsticks down, sighing as well. You seem so unhappy lately. She murmured, looking sadly at him. Naruto felt the guilt spread like wildfire throughout his body, and he thought for a second about telling Hinata. But thought better of it. Not tonight. I've just been busy. And honestly, you don't have to have a baby to make me happy. He said, a little irritated that that's what she thought of him. So, you don't? She asked again. Naruto shook his head. She breathed what he felt was a sigh of relief and went back to eating her ramen. Naruto was helping her clear the table, the space in the room quiet. Whilst grabbing the chopsticks up, Naruto looked at the sink. She was standing there washing the dishes. A sense of deja vu fell over him and he thought back to what had happened with Sakura. No, he couldn't do that to Hinata again. Or to himself. It was wrong. But. Groaning, Naruto looked at her again, his eyes tracing her back, sliding down to ogle her. It wasn't the same. Damn it. Slamming the chopsticks down, Naruto snarled at his thoughts, and his urges. Naruto-kun, are you alright? His wife's voice hit him and he looked at her concerned face. Nodding, Naruto walked stiffly over to her, touching her cheek tenderly, dipping low, claiming her mouth. Hinata whimpered, making Naruto groan. It took minutes for him to completely strip down her and himself down. Then, he was inside her, bending her over the sink, taking her swiftly from behind. He tried. Cammy above, he tried not to think of this afternoon. Or what happened in the bar. But, he did. He thought of Sakura's hips bucking against his, butt molding over his erection perfectly, making him so hard it was nearly painful. Shaking loose those thoughts, Naruto looked down at his whimpering wife, her hips pulling back to meet his demanding thrusts. Naruto. Naruto tilted his head back once more, the heat crashing over him like a wave. Thrusting once more, he came roughly into his wife, smashing his hips forwards, her keening cry reaching his ears. Afterwards, as he laid in bed, listening to the soft, even breaths of his wife, he knew that he had to talk to somebody. Arriving at the apartment, Naruto looked around, making sure no one was in the vicinity. Coast was clear. Sighing, Naruto lifted a hand and knocked loudly. No answer. Scowling, he knocked again. No answer. Knocking once more, almost to a pounding decibel, he heard foul cursing on the other side. Quote. Just give me a damn minute. The door swung open. What? Onyx's eyes widened, then glared. Could you be any louder or impatient, Naruto? Kakashi asked, annoyed. The blonde rubbed the back of his head, smiling awkwardly. Sorry, sensei. I really have to talk to you about something. The silver-haired man nodded, stepping to the side, letting the young Hokage through. He had a hunch on what the subject was on. Want anything to drink? Sake? Naruto smiled, nodding. I wasn't interrupting anything, was I? His ex-student asked, looking around, a little uncomfortable at the thought of catching his ex-teacher in a compromising position. Nope. Not tonight. Maybe tomorrow. Kakashi answered, grabbing his bottle of alcohol, sitting across from Naruto in his living room. Naruto blushed, and nodded. Well, good luck, he said, watching the older man smirk arrogantly. They did small talk for a little bit, before Kakashi looked squarely at the younger male, raising an eyebrow. What did you need to talk about? Naruto set his cup down, nudging it in the way of the Hitaki male. Kakashi took the hint and poured a shot, nudging it back. Taking a deep breath, Naruto threw it back, shivering at the burn in his chest, yet relishing in it. I've been sleeping with Sakura. Kakashi wasn't surprised, he figured that's what would happen. After all these years of watching Naruto fawn over Sakura from a distance. It was about damn time. But, he was married. They were both married. And that was wrong. How long? Naruto leaned back. Close to 2 weeks now. Kakashi scratched his nose, furrowing his eyebrows. And I'm assuming Hinata does not know? He asked the young blonde, who looked horrified, shaking his head. Yeah, he assumed that as well. Kakashi-sensei, I don't know what to do. With Sakura I feel alive. Like the old me. Sometimes I look in the mirror at home and see nothing but an old man. A person I don't know, and don't want to know. When did I turn into Naruto the Hokage? Where is Naruto Uzumaki? The older male nodded, understanding where the younger male was coming from. And what do you feel when you're with Hinata? Naruto looked down sadly at that question, ashamed of the answer that flitted through his brain. I feel content, settled. 2 great words to describe a marriage. Kakashi downed his sake, pouring a generous amount back into his cup. And with Sakura, you said you feel alive. Naruto nodded, feeling his face flush. I feel passionate. I feel whole, he said, feeling the shame rush over him at the revelation that just now hit his heart. It was the truth. It had always been the truth. Naruto, I have a question, and I've actually been wanting to ask you this for a very long time. Kakashi said, interrupting his thoughts. The blonde just stared at the elder male. Why didn't you tell Sakura about your feelings sooner? Naruto sighed, closing his eyes, leaning back against the sofa. She loved Sasuke. She always has. I couldn't compete with him. I never could. He's calm and collected. And I'm loud and emotional. I'm pretty sure I annoy her 99% of the time. Kakashi smiled softly, shaking his head at his previous student. I don't think that's the case, Naruto. Sakura, well, she came to see me after the bar, and she was really torn up on the fact that she never told you her feelings. Naruto sat up at that. She did. What else did she say? Kakashi rubbed his chin. I gave her my word. I can't divulge that information, but you should talk to her about it. Silence. There isn't really a point. We're both married, and it would only complicate things even more than they already are. If that's possible. Kakashi looked away, feeling heat rise to his cheeks due to the sake. Are you going to tell Hinata? Naruto felt the shame wash over him, etching itself on his face, and he sighed, feeling exhausted out of nowhere. In due time, yes, I will tell her. I don't know what will happen when she finds out. Should we divorce? Should I try and work things out with her? Kakashi looked at him again. I think you should tell her, when you're ready. And Sakura should definitely tell Sasuke. Honestly, I don't even think he'll give it any thought. He's never here and she deserves to be happy. Wouldn't you agree? You both deserve to be happy, Naruto. The Hokage in question sighed but nodded. Silence. Smirking lightly, he looked the elder shinobi over. So, you bringing a man or woman home tomorrow? Kakashi choked on the sake he was drinking, the burning making his eyes water profusely. What? He coughed, which made Naruto laugh. Kakashi took a big breath in, turning a scowl on the blonde man across the way. Is that a question regarding my UAL preferences? Naruto just shrugged. Now, Naruto, you've seen the book I read. What do you think? Hey, looks could be deceiving. You never know, maybe you're good at covering it up. Then again, for the longest time, we all three thought you were Owl. Or, maybe nothing but your hand could suffice. He chuckled, watching the red streak cover his ex-teacher's face. I'll have you know that I got plenty of action before and after I met all of you brats. With women. Naruto smirked, but nodded. Well, since we're laying all this out, I must know. Did you and Sasuke ever decide to poke each other? Naruto was glad he wasn't drinking when Kakashi-sensei asked that question, or the sake would be all over the other man. What are you talking about? The young blonde screeched, standing up, face inflamed. Kakashi chuckled. Well, I just presumed after all those years of chasing him, that maybe you had another reason, other than friendship. Naruto felt his jaw unhinge and fall open. What? Kakashi just shrugged, humored at the fact that the blonde was currently opening and shutting his mouth like a fish. I have never wanted to have a relationship like that with Sasuke. Naruto spat, shuddering at the image that flit across his mind. The silver-haired male only chuckled, wiping his eyes free of the tears that pooled due to his excessive laughing. Naruto smiled too, watching the older shinobi lean back, wrapping his arm around the back of the sofa. That mask was still in place, and Naruto glared. That mask is coming off. Sensei. You know, it's been 19 years, when are you going to finally show us what's under that mask? Naruto questioned him. Kakashi smirked. Well, first off Naruto, you're the Hokage now, you don't need to call me sensei. And second, why does it matter what's under the mask? Is it because of your bet with Sasuke and Sakura? The blonde sputtered on his drink then, coughing violently. How did you know about that? Kakashi set his cup down, folding his arms. Sakura let it slip when she told me about what happened between the two of you. We had done the give and take thing, where if she answered a specific Personal question, I'd take off my mask. Well, she let spill that you all had a bet on what I had under it. Naruto cursed Sakura silently. You bet I had fish lips. Naruto just shrugged, snickering. I think it's a multitude of things, probably bad teeth, or a ed-up lip. Take your pick. Silence. Honestly, I don't want to see it anymore. Considering your age, you probably are littered with age spots. Wrinkles tend to form around the mouth first once you hit old age. Kakashi lifted a brow, flaring his nostrils. So, the women you bring home, are they old as well? Maybe full-time bar pedestrians, looking for a little bit of time with someone as old as them so they won't feel so bad. I guess pity is better than know it all. Kakashi glared. Reverse psychology. I know what you're doing, Naruto. The elder ninja stated, sounding bored, yet aggravated that he was getting older. I'm not doing anything. Everyone gets old. No shame in that game. But still, are we supposed to pretend that you're actually decent looking with all those wrinkles, and frown lines? Especially around your eyes, they're terrible. Naruto put the cherry on top by making a grossed out face, making a show of inspecting his own face. Kakashi sighed. Oh well, he had waited almost 20 years to see it, he deserved it by now. Grunting, he forced the mask down, and watched as the younger male's eyes widened. Whoa, it's a good thing you kept your face hidden, sensei. Imagine all the females that would be clamoring over you on missions. You know when you were young enough to go on missions. Kakashi glared harder at him. Enough of that. Naruto was still inspecting his face, when his eyes hit the mole at the corner of his mouth. Oh shit. You have a wart. Mole. Beauty spot. Kakashi murmured, shoving his mask back over his features. Naruto snickered, taking it all in, thanking Kakashi for doing that for him, and apologized for the falsified insults. You're still young, Kakashi-sensei. Alive and kickin' if what you say is true about your UAL exploits. The Hitaki male chuckled. True. 1 week later, Naruto was standing in front of the mirror in his bedroom, adjusting his Hokage robe, running his fingers through his blonde tresses. His hair was starting to grow out longer, and he had decided to let it. He missed his longer locks, liking how they made him look younger. Probably why Kakashi-sensei never cut his own hair. He looked pretty good, deciding on a shirt with a little less orange, only the Uzumaki symbol, and stripes on the cuffs were orange. The shirt fitted to him, opting out of the one that looked baggy. It really defined him and definitely his chest, his pants black, shinobi sandals completing the ensemble. Naruto-kun. Hinata appeared behind him, dusting off his Hokage robe, smiling at him in the mirror. Are you sure you don't want to try and go? He asked her, a little disappointed she wouldn't be accompanying him. Shaking her head, she blushed. It isn't really a dinner like that, Naruto-kun. Temari-chan isn't going with Shikamaru-chan, and I couldn't get a sitter. Naruto sighed, but nodded. All right. Well, I need to be going. I'll be home when this is all over. Hopefully it won't take too long. I wouldn't wait up, he told her, leaning forward, pecking her forward, an intense wave of guilt crashing over him, which he shook off diligently. Closing his eyes, sighing, he pulled away, bidding her farewell. Sakura stood in the mirror, turning this way and that, inspecting the long kimono-like dress she had purchased the day before, enjoying the color. It was a pale pink like her hair, adorned with black leggings underneath and her white heels. She topped the ensemble off with her doctor's coat, and a little bit of makeup. Mom, you look great, Sarada's voice said, her daughter's image appearing in the mirror. Thank you, Sakura said to her child, patting her head. Now, you're sure you'll be here all right for a couple of hours? Sarada rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. Yes, Mom. This isn't the first time you've left me to watch over the house. Sakura blanched at that, a wave of maternal guilt taking over her, making her sigh. Believe me, I wish I could stay here. The Hokage's council is going to be drilling me and my team like crazy concerning this clinical trial. Sarada smiled. I know you can do it, Mom. Just put on the charm, and I'm sure Lord Seventh will help you out in that respect as well. Since he's rather charming himself. Sakura raised an eyebrow, seeing her daughter blush at that statement. You think highly of Naruto, don't you? She asked Sarada, laughter present in her tone. Sarada blushed profusely, shaking her head, waving her hands about. No. Mom. He's old. Sakura rolled her eyes, dabbing on a little bit of lip gloss, grabbing her purse. Right. Being in your early 30s makes you old, Sarada tried to backtrack, not wanting to offend her own mother with that statement. No. That is, I. Sakura laughed, bending low and hugging Sarada, ruffling her hair. No problem, kid. Just be safe while I'm gone, alright? If you need anything, you have my number, and also Grandma and Grandpa's. Naruto and the council sat at one of the tables in the back room at Gyokai, the newest seafood establishment in Konoha. Looking around, Naruto noticed Shikamaru coming through the door, putting out a cigarette before stepping in, taking off his sandals. He looked like he normally did. Not surprising, Shikamaru was too lazy to look nice in any capacity, but Naruto didn't care. Yo, Hokage-sama, he said, waving slightly. Naruto glared at the formality. What did I tell you, Shikamaru? Naruto asked, sighing in aggravation. Hey, the council is here, it's only proper. I don't want one of them bitching me out for not being professional. Grin and bear it, just for this dinner. Naruto looked annoyed, but nodded, flipping through a menu that had been placed in front of him. Nothing but seafood. He wanted ramen. Sakura brushed her dress off for the 1000th time before walking inside, the medical team on her heels, mumbling about how nice the restaurant looked. Removing her sandals, she looked towards the table and noticed Naruto. Looking bored. But, the rest of him looked handsome, his hair a little shaggy, starting to fall back into his eyes again. Smiling, she saw him raise his head, eyes clashing with hers, blue ones widening at her state of dress, his back straightening. Sakura felt herself blush, adjusting her coat, feeling self-conscious all of a sudden. Naruto was listening to the unending conversation to his left, when he heard voices near the front. Sakura. Darting his eyes over to her, he felt a breath rush from his chest. She looked glorious. Just like a cherry blossom in bloom. Her dress matched with her red one remarkably, only the color matched almost perfectly with her hair, and there was no flare out in the middle of this one, the whole thing falling to mid-shin. She wore black tights underneath. The whole outfit brought him back to his genin days, and he shuddered. The thing that stood out the most though was her eyes. Her gorgeous eyes that he had immediately fallen in love with as a child, never before seeing such emerald hues. His eyes wouldn't move off of her, watching as she shook hands with his council, introducing her staff to everybody, including Shikamaru, then to him. Hokage-sama. Her voice cut through, and he shook his head out of the clouds, smiling at the hospital staff, standing up and greeting them formally. Welcome. Please, take a seat. Sakura felt his eyes on her, her stomach quivering, nerves on tight ends. Shooting a glance up his way, she raised a brow, glaring lightly, making him smirk and look away. Sakura-sama. Misuru started, I'd like to know more about this clinical trial. Are you sure you'll be able to master the skills for it to work? Naruto raised an eyebrow at the statement, feeling it was teetering on an insult. However, the pinkett blushed, taking a sip of water before she began. Well, me and my team have done some intense research regarding the byproduct, and there's no reason as to why we wouldn't be able to successfully make a spinal graft. Not only that, but it will start giving us insights on other bone grafts as well. Misuru grunted, but nodded. Naruto smiled at the professional way Sakura held herself, proud of her, knowing Misuru was a lot to handle. I think it's a grand thing. Hana, the third member of the council said, taking a sip of sake. Why is that? Misuru questioned her. Well, because it means we're moving forward in medical departments. It's never a good thing to be left behind, and Sakura-chan here is the best medical kunuchi in Konoha, if not in many governing lands. Remember, we've had a bounce in revenue for the hospital, due to patients coming from other villages to see her and only her. Tsunade-sama had that as well. And she was a Sanin. Naruto smiled at the elder woman, feeling even more pride run through his chest. Sakura needed to know how amazing she was as a doctor. He knew her self-esteem got a little bit down. In the midst of Naruto staring around the table, taking in conversations, and minor chit-chat, he noticed the male member of the medical staff staring at Sakura, a strange look in his eyes. Admiration. Naruto felt a growl rumble deep within. Slapping himself and Kurama mentally, he looked away, knowing that nothing good would come of him shooting fiery glares the younger male's way. The dinner took quite a while, through many conversations about how to bone graft, to families, to children, to the hospital's regular funding, which really needed to be looked into. They required an abundance of things that they couldn't keep pushing off. Naruto had a couple ideas in mind. As everyone crowded at the door to leave, Naruto watched Sakura put her heels back on, the same male touching her shoulder, gripping it firmly, saying words of congratulations, smiling warmly. The same growl penetrated Naruto's mind. Stop it. Do something. Whelp. Naruto ignored him. There was nothing he could do. Leaving the restaurant, Naruto walked side by side with Sakura, telling her he would walk her home. He received a raised brow at the statement, but she shrugged, cheeks taking on a dusty color at his chivalry. When they had all dispersed, Naruto made sure no one was within hearing distance. You look beautiful tonight, Sakura. He muttered. Sakura glanced at him, feeling his blue eyes on her. Stomach fluttering, Sakura nudged his shoulder, thanking him in a teasing manner, not noticing the veil of heat fall over his irises. Silence. You also did a fantastic job with the council. They're actually looking forward to this clinical trial, and they don't look forward to anything, except maybe me stepping down. Naruto joked, cupping his hands behind his head. Sakura watched him, a strong sense of déjà vu falling over her. This is how it always used to be. They'd walk home from training, or eating, or seeing Lady Tsunade for their briefing. But, things were very different now. And the thought made Sakura's heart clench, teeth worrying her lower lip. Silence. Naruto. She started, feeling her throat clench with emotion. I just wanted to say you look very handsome tonight. I like that you're growing your hair out. And the shirt does wonders for you. Not too orange. Which, there's nothing wrong with orange. She mumbled, feeling the pit of her stomach flutter when his fingers grazed her hand as they continued walking. The blonde stopped walking then, eyes fastened on her, leaning forward to grab her wrist, stopping her movements. Sakura ed in a breath at his facial expression. Sakura, I need to speak to you about something, about everything. Can we go somewhere private? He whispered, tightening his hold on her. The kunuchi ed in a breath, feeling her frame start to tremble. We can't, Naruto. Sarada is at home, Ayan. Suddenly, her words were cut off, Naruto folding her in his arms, bouncing away. Sakura gasped, struggling a little in his grasp. Naruto. What the hell? The blonde smirked, and instantly stopped, the pinkett clutching the front of his shirt fiercely. Opening her eyes, Sakura gasped. They were on top of the Hokage monument. Naruto removed his cloak, sitting down, patting the space beside him. Sakura smiled lightly, reaching down and removing her sandals, putting them beside his robe. They sat in silence for a little bit, their stares straight above at the stars, the echoing stillness peaceful, instilling calm where chaos usually clamored. Sakura. His deep voice reached her, and she turned to look at him, entranced by the tranquility that fell over both of them. The blonde male closed his eyes, gritting his teeth, trying to find the right way to start this conversation. Sakura wrapped her arms around her knees, pulling them up against her chin, eyes still on the young Hokage, who seemed to be waging a war with himself. What was wrong? Sakura, he began again, his throat dry, feeling as if he swallowed several thousand cotton balls. Are you all right, Naruto? She mumbled, reaching out to grab his hand, squeezing his fingers. The touch sent a spike of heat to his heart and he looked down, finally gathering the courage. I love you. Sakura felt time pause around her, her throat constricting, then quivering, tears building in her eyes. Naruto felt his heart squeeze when she didn't answer, blue eyes closing and looking away. I love you too. A raspy voice hit him and he turned his head to her, green eyes staring in his direction, tears leaking down her cheeks. Naruto felt his own misting, then well up and flow over, mirroring what his soul was doing. Breathing in raggedly, he enclosed her in his arms, stuffing his nose in her tresses, feeling her shake furiously against him, hands and nails clenching his shirt, sobs mixing with his own. Naruto. Sakura whispered, shutting her eyes, pulling out of his warm embrace, wiping her eyes. I know. He responded, knowing what she was going to say. You're with Hinata, Naruto. And I'm with Sasuke. And I don't know what we're doing, are we going to continue to have this fling? That was the wrong thing to say. Fling. Naruto growled, glaring at her. Sakura bit her lip, wishing she could take the words back. She knew that wasn't what this was. After me just admitting to you that I loved you, you still think this is a fling? Well, Naruto, it's sort of a foregone conclusion, isn't it? No, it's not. Not for me. He responded hotly, cheek twitching with his frustration. Sakura sighed, but nodded, closing her eyes. Naruto. I do not want to break up you and Hinata's marriage, that's not anything I want. I don't want to be part of that, please. She all but begged him, watching him tense. Silence. What if I want to? He murmured, glancing at her in what looked like shame. Sakura felt like someone had shoved her in the chest, eyes misting over once more. Do you? She asked, voice raspy, thick with tension. Naruto breathed out a sigh, shoving his hand into his hair to almost tear at the strands in frustration. I just really don't like who I'm becoming right now. And when I think about Bolt and Himawari, it's just not behavior that I want to model for my children. Those words ripped through her like a kunai and she almost whimpered. Swallowing back pain that threatened to consume her, she sniffled. What do you want to do? Naruto felt his throat burn and constrict with the tears he tried to not shed. I think we should stop. Those were the words that Sakura knew were coming. It didn't make them hurt any less though, and she felt her shoulders shake with an uncontrollable urge to plunge herself off the monument. The impact would hurt less. Naruto looked at her, tears leaking out of his irises, fighting his entire being to not sob. Sakura couldn't help clutching the spot where her heart lay, the heat making its way through her body, to scald her organ, thoroughly incinerating her from the inside out. Oh okay. She managed to rasp out, moving to shaky feet. Naruto watched her, wanting to reach a hand out to grasp hers, but deciding not to. Not bothering to put her shoes on, Sakura looked over her shoulder once more, watching as he turned his face away from hers, hands clenched tightly, shoulders trembling. Sakura didn't wait for any more words to be exchanged, hopping off the monument and away from the man that had just effectively shattered her. Sarada looked at the time. It was approaching 10 o'clock and wondered where her mother was. Closing the ninja book she was reading, she laid back, staring at the ceiling. There was something going on between her mother and the seventh. She could feel it. It all went back to that night when he stopped over. After he had left, her mother was rattled for the rest of the evening, seemingly lost in space the entire time. She looked so sad, so disappointed. It left Sarada confused and a little uneasy. What had he said to her to warrant that sort of response? Did the clinical trial get turned down? No, it hadn't, for she had asked her mom that exact question shortly after the seventh left. So, what was it? It wasn't only that evening either, it was days afterwards as well. Every time Sarada would bring him up, her mom would get this strange expression of what seemed like pain, but not physical pain. Emotional pain. And it wasn't only her mother either, but also the Hokage himself. Twice, she had brought up her mother's late nights at the hospitals, and Lord Seventh took on a face of concern immediately, eyebrows furrowing. He then drilled Sarada on if she was sleeping all right, or eating. Sarada raised a brow at him, only nodding, a little confused. The raven-haired teenager sighed, rubbing her nose. She had a guess of what was going on, but it really wasn't her business. Her mother was a grown woman, but she was worried about her. Suddenly, Sarada picked up on a sound and she sat up quickly, gripping a kunai she kept on her dresser. Tiptoeing down the hallway, activating her Sharingan, she heard the sound coming from her mother's bedroom. Stopping, she pressed her ear against the door, hearing a muffled sob hit her ears. It was her mother. Sarada put the kunai down, continuing to listen. The sobs were coming out quicker and louder now, even if her mom tried to stifle them. They broke Sarada's heart. Something had happened. Sarada stood in the doorway to the kitchen, studying her mother who was sipping quietly at her cup of coffee. Her eyes were downcast, shoulders slumped, hair disheveled. She looked like she hadn't slept at all the previous night. Sarada sighed sadly, hating to see her mother so depressed. Silence. Mom, Sarada called finally, moving out of the doorway to sit at the table with her. Sakura looked up at her daughter, eyes and cheeks red. Sarada felt her heart squeeze at her mom's expression, trying to plaster a fake smile on her own face. What are we doing today? We haven't spent much time together since I started to go on more missions. Sakura gave a small smile, pushing her coffee cup back from her fingers. I need to get a few things from the grocery store. We're running low on tomatoes, and I also need to run to the library and grab some medical books. Is that all right? Sarada smiled warmly. Of course. The market area was crowded, the stores even more so. Sakura and Sarada walked in and out of several businesses, greeting the owners, making small talk with pedestrians, patients, and friends from school. Sakura was starting to feel a little better, when suddenly she saw Hinata. The Pinkett was standing outside the library, trying to shift her medical books around when the raven-haired woman approached her with a big smile. Sarada watched her mother, who seemed extremely tense now, almost dropping the books she had just bought. Mrs. Uzumaki. Why was Mom so nervous upon seeing her? Oh, Sakura-chan. I haven't seen you in a long time, how are you? Hinata asked the other Kunyuchi. Sakura herself blushed and fumbled around even more with her purchases. I'm alright, Hinata-chan. I haven't seen you and Himawari in quite a while. And she smiled down at the little girl, the child beaming up with a smile. Sarada saw her mother's fingers trembling on her books and she immediately grabbed her hand. Come on, Mom, we need to get moving if we want to start training. You promised me, she said, looking up at her mother, emphasizing her crossness with the tapping of her foot. Oh, I'm sorry, Sakura-chan, I've held you two up. Sakura just shook her head, feeling Sarada pull harder on her. Not at all, Hinata-chan. I'll see you later, and you too, Himawari. She called over to her shoulder as her daughter drug her away. Sarada. What in the world was that about? Sakura demanded, nudging her daughter, shooting a small glare over to her, yet fully relieved to be taken out of that situation. The smaller Uchiha just shrugged, tucking her hands behind her back in what seemed like she was thinking. You seemed really uncomfortable. Why is that? Sakura flinched, but said nothing. What could she say? There should be no reason to be so uncomfortable around someone like Hinata. Unless you were sleeping with her husband, then, yeah, you would probably be immensely uncomfortable around them. Let's just go home, Sakura mumbled, feeling the air around her and her daughter tense up with something she couldn't quite place and didn't want to. Sarada didn't let it go though. Once they were at home, in the safety of their house, surrounded by no one who could hear, she asked her mom the big question. Mom, why did you marry Dad? Sakura was flipping through her medical book, suddenly stopping, a little stunned at the question. Well, I love him. That's why, she muttered, weaving her hand through her pink tresses to shove the single strands out of her eyes. You love him, or you loved him? Sarada asked, watching as her mom's green eyes rose to look into her onyx ones. Why this question all of a sudden? I love your father. I always have. Sarada didn't say anything to that, just continued to stare at her mother as something akin to doubt flashed over her face. Yes, but you also love Lord Seventh. Sakura tightened the grip on her page, wincing at what her child just said. I love him as a friend, he's been my best friend for going on 20 years now. The teenager glared, not believing that at all. No, Mom, you love him in a different way. I can tell, I can see it. Sakura felt her heart lurch. Silence. Mom, you deserve someone who loves you. Who's there for you? For us. Sakura shook her head, sighing. Sarada. She started, closing her book, looking at her daughter narrowly. A raised brow was all she got. I love Naruto as a friend. And your father, he's gone for specific reasons, to help protect the village and everyone else from the descendants of Kagaya. Sarada grit her teeth, suddenly angry. Yes, but that doesn't mean he can never be here. Why doesn't he try to contact us at least? It's stupid. Mom, stop it. Stop making excuses for him. I can hear you crying in your room at night. And they're not tears of happiness either. Sakura was taken aback, feeling her throat constrict at the tears that bubbled in Sarada's eyes and fell over, the Sharingan activating. Silence, save for sobbing. Sakura didn't know what to say. She felt completely drained of all her emotions at the moment. Rubbing her forehead, she reached for her child, who drew back, still crying. Sarada, I know your father hasn't been here, and I know that you miss him. But, no, it's not your fault, Mom. You've tried, I know you have. I've seen those sent letters. I've seen you stand on the back porch waiting for something, anything from him. Sakura nodded, shutting her eyes. But, Mom, I know you love Lord Seventh. Don't lie to me. When he left the other night, you were depressed, and you hardly said anything at dinner. Silence. Sakura looked at her child, reaching out and smoothing her hair away from dampened cheeks. Sarada Uchiha, I will never regret marrying your father, or meeting him. And you know why? Sarada just shrugged. Because he gave me you. I could not imagine my life without you in it. Ever. So, You might be angry with him, and you might resent him. But I don't. And it's because I have you. The teenager felt her lower lip tremble. She suddenly threw herself into her mother's arms, sobbing into her shoulder, hands gripping the red dress she wore. Sakura herself felt her own tears build up and fall, making her eyes blurry, the room around them becoming a blob as she tried to rein in her anguish in front of Sarada. A couple of seconds went by and the two of them pulled away from each other, wiping tear-stained cheeks, smiling widely. "We're a mess, Mom." Sarada snickered, sniffling. Sakura chuckled, and nodded her head, feeling a pang of sadness hit her once again. "Sarada, the topic regarding Lord Say Naruto, you know it's wrong, don't you?" She stated firmly. Her daughter silently observed her mother for a moment, and finally sighed, taking the seat opposite her once more. "Mom, listen, I've been friends with Bolt for a very long time now. And I have been around Lord Seventh and his wife. He doesn't look at her the way he looks at you." Sakura felt her heart speed up at this revelation, clearing her throat, tightening her hands into fists under the table. "Sarada, you are young, you couldn't possibly wound." "Mom," the raven-haired teenager interrupted, rolling her eyes. Sakura moved her eyes over to where her child sat. "It's obvious. I'm very observant. We both know this." Sakura closed her eyes, feeling exhausted all over again. "Even so, Sarada, it's wrong because Naruto and I are both married." Silence. "Yeah, but he doesn't love her. And Dad is never here. So, Naruto loves his wife. Not the same way he loves you." "Yes, he is in love with her." "No, not in the romantic way. In a respectful sort of way. He doesn't joke with her, or smile that much in her presence." "Sarada, please." Sakura almost begged her daughter, wanting her to stop talking about the situation. "Mom, wake up." Sarada snapped, slapping the table in frustration. Sakura raised an eyebrow at her daughter. "Sorry. But really, Mom, chase after your own happiness for once. You've done enough for Dad, and for me. And for everybody else for that matter." Sakura didn't respond, only stared at a spot on the floor, contemplating her daughter's words, and their repercussions. Sigh. Bolt watched his father spoon some ramen into his mouth, sighing soundly, rubbing the heel of his palm across his forehead for the third time in 10 minutes. Dad, something wrong?" Naruto looked down at his son, inquiring blue eyes staring up at him, eyebrow arched in question towards the mont's odd behavior. "Nothing, Bolt. I'm just tired from work is all." Naruto lied, closing his eyes. Bolt said nothing, observing him for a second. Something was wrong. Something that had nothing to do with work. "Naruto-kun." A voice cut through the silence, shaking him away from his bedroom window. "Hinata." Naruto sighed, closed his eyes, but turned around to face her, smiling lightly. "Yes, Hinata. Is something wrong, Naruto-kun?" "Damn. No. Why?" Hinata bit her lip, shutting their bedroom door, taking a seat on the bed. "Well, Bolt was telling me you seemed distant at lunch, and you kept rubbing your head. You only do that when you're agitated. Or stressed." "Damn it, Bolt. I'm fine. It's just work," he muttered, pushing blonde locks back from his eyes. Hinata looked him over and nodded, standing up. "Dinner is done. I made your FA. My favorite." "Yeah," he growled, turning back to the window. Silence. "And Naruto-kun." The man in question felt his temper rising, nostrils flaring, he whirled around on his wife. "Why can't you make your favorite? Or the kids' favorites? Why is it always my favorites, Hinata? Why is it always what I want? What you think'll want? It's every night, every day." He was raising his voice, but he couldn't help it. He wanted to break this facade she had placed around herself. He wanted to smash it, crush it, he wanted it to go away. Naruto-kun, you're my husband, I do these things to make you happy. Hinata muttered, wringing her hands together. You try to make me happy by pushing your needs back, and it drives me crazy. I see how unhappy you are. I'm not blind, Hinata. He bellowed, watching as her eyes widened, seeing her take a step backwards. Naruto caught himself, closing his eyes, taking deep breaths. Silence. I'm not unhappy, Naruto-kun. She whispered. Naruto shook his head, wanting her to go away from him. You gave up being a kunoichi for me. That's what you told me. But, I never asked you to do that. You gave up what you wanted to do, because you thought it would make me happy. You think seeing you sit in the house and take care of children, makes me happy. Silence. My father told me it's what most men would want. The words she had just spoken managed to ignite Naruto's temper to an almost unimaginable height. Turning slowly to her, he felt Kurama growl vehemently in his chest. You took that man's advice concerning what I'd want. He snarled, feeling his hands tremble. Hinata bit her lip and shrugged. Naruto couldn't look at her. She knew how he felt regarding her of a father, and she actually thought about taking his advice regarding what he would want her to be. Basically a Stepford wife. He couldn't stand it. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. She murmured tearfully. Naruto shook his head, nostrils flaring, heart beating out of his chest. Sakura. Yeah, Hinata. I'm sorry too, he responded, turning to her, and promptly stormed out of the room. Sakura was nursing a cup of tea when a pounding on the door made her jump out of her skin. Who the hell was that? Standing up promptly, she wrenched the door open, opening her mouth to scold the rude person on the other side. Naruto. The man in question reached forward and grabbed her hand, dragging her towards his chest, blue eyes bright. Let's go train. Sakura felt her legs turn to mush as she caught the sight of lust just beneath his irises. It was a good thing that Sarada had went to Chocho's for the night. Nodding, she closed her door, watching as Naruto broke into a run, squeaking in surprise, she set off after him. They ended up at the abandoned training field, the terrain ripped up and overgrown with random plants. Sakura looked around, fumbling with the kunai she held at the waistline of her pants, trying to scout out Naruto's chakra. Too late. Naruto was upon her in a second, pinning her to the earth, his hands gripping her wrists, folding them against the ground. Naruto. That's cheating. She hissed up at him. Don't let your guard down. He hissed right back. Sakura snarled, channeling chakra to her hands, flinging him off in one blow. Naruto leapt up, grasping the ties to his cloak, wrenching it off of his person. Why did you ask me to spar with you? Shouldn't you have asked Kakashi, or maybe your wife? Naruto glared harder, gripping his own kunai, darting towards her. Sakura brought her own knife up and the blades clashed together, making the metal ping loudly, the aftershocks reverberating through both of them. Blue eyes glared into green ones, and Sakura grit her teeth, shoving her body weight into the push, forcing him back a little bit. Naruto moved to his left, managed to get her off kilter, ramming his shoulder into hers. Sakura winced but didn't back down. Throwing the kunai to the side, she shoved at his shoulders, watching as he stumbled. Running forwards, she shoved him again, bringing her foot out to trip him, watching as he fell on his butt. Smirking, she sat on top of him and dug her knee into his abdomen, winding a hand that was glowing blue around his neck. Naruto was panting, watching as she panted as well. Damn it. He felt the blood rush down below and he watched as she realized it as well, the hardness pressing into her thigh. Sakura gasped a little bit, looking down at him, watching as he ed in a breath. Silence. Silence. Naruto clutched her hips, fingers trembling. Sakura felt desire knot in her belly, leaning forward and deftly placing her lips on his, hearing him groan. They said they would stop. Naruto sat up, still holding her sides, bucking his hips into her clothed core, watching as her green eyes shut in pleasure. Naruto. We can't do this, she muttered, feeling her nipples tighten. Yes, we can. What I said before. I want you. I need you, Sakura. The kunoichi groaned, feeling his lips slide down her neck, moving to at her collarbone, his tongue sliding up her jaw to latch onto her lips. Sakura closed her eyes, moving her hands down to fumble with his zipper, managing to get it down, feeling him throb below her fingers. Naruto groaned, his own hands unzipping her pants, lifting her hips up to pull them over her thighs, leaning her back. Sakura moaned, feeling the night air hit her wet core, sending shooting spirals of pleasure up her spine. Naruto pulled his pants down, along with his boxers, watching his erection spring free, hissing at the physical contact the air made with his flesh. Sakura watched him, bathed in the setting sun's light, his bronzed skin turning even darker, her womanhood quivering at the thought of him inside her once again. Naruto, she whimpered, grabbing his appendage and steering it to her opening. In one thrust he was inside her, and the two shinobi moaned loudly, feeling complete again. Naruto stopped for a second, lowering his forehead against hers, feeling the heat of her breath fanning over his cheeks. Closing his eyes, he started to thrust softly, relishing in the tight warmth that wrapped around his manhood. Kami, Sakura, he bit out through gritted teeth. Sakura herself bucked her hips up, trying to get closer to him, wanting to feel every inch of his skin against hers. Stop, she said, pushing at his shoulders. Naruto snapped his eyes open and pulled out, sitting on his knees, watching as the woman below him sat up and wrenched the rest of her clothes off, her fingers fiddling with his shirt, moving to pull it over his head. The grass will be scratchy, he warned, giving a half smile, his mouth watering at the stiffness of her nipples. I don't care, Sakura responded, hands roaming his bare chest, tongue dancing along his neck, making him shiver. Naruto grabbed her hair suddenly, pushing their mouths together again, laying her onto her back, sliding inside her tight body. Kami, she was wet. Sakura yelped at the pressure, relishing in it at the same time. Naruto, she whimpered, her fingers dragging along his spine, mouthing at the juncture of his neck. The young Hokage smirked, planting his lips on her forehead as he thrust his hips into hers forcefully. Sakura, you have a charming forehead. Makes me want to groan kiss it. The woman below him gasped, her movements stilling, hands falling free of his chest, landing on the grass in a boneless heap, head turning away from him. Naruto stopped, concerned at her lack of movement. Sakura, he whispered, seeing her shoulders tremble. Oh damn, hey, he said, grasping her chin, turning her face to look at him. She was crying, lips trembling, her green eyes stared up at his worried expression. Naruto closed his eyes, bandaged hand cradling her cheek, listening to her sobs cut through the serenity of the abandoned training field, and their love-making. It was you, Sakura managed to say. Naruto nodded, kissing her tear-stained cheeks. Sobbing still, Sakura ran her hand up his side, fingers gently touching an unnamed scar. That was me. She whispered, tears falling thick and fast down her cheeks, throat burning with sobs that were wrenching from her mouth. Naruto pulled back from her, thumb stroking her cheek still, eyes filled with question. Sakura shook her head, gasping back sobs, when the 9 tails was taken from you during the war. Why your heart stopped. Taking a deep breath in, Sakura grabbed the wrist of the hand stroking her face. I had to cut you open and pump your heart. I lit. Sakura closed her eyes, trying to pull herself together some more. I literally pumped your heart with my hand. I performed CPR on you until we got to your father. Naruto felt his heart speed up to an unhealthy beat, eyes watering, lips trembling. It was her. She had restarted his heart, had literally saved him from dying with her bare hands. Sakura. Sakura. Leaning forward, Naruto placed their foreheads together and felt the tears trickle down his cheeks, matching hers, chest shaking with the sobs that racked their frames. Naruto pulled off of her, sitting up, reaching out to thrust her against him, hugging her so tightly, he knew he was probably cutting her breath off. Sakura didn't care. She loved him. She loved him. Naruto clutched the back of her head, her forehead resting against his collarbone, hand on the back of her neck tight and trembling. Naruto loved her so much it was almost painful. He loved her. It had been a week since her and Naruto had last seen each other, and that was in the abandoned training field. After their confessions towards each other, they had made love under the stars, managing to separate from the other after 2 hours of doing so. Naruto had told her about the fight between him and Hinata. Sakura hated herself slightly, for she knew that one of the reasons as to why that fight transpired was because of the affair between she and Naruto. He wanted to leave Hinata, to tell her their marriage wasn't working, and that he wasn't happy. Sakura argued furiously against that, telling him he needed to at least try. For his children. Flashback. This is what I want to do, Sakura. He said, shrugging on his clothes, ignoring the heated glare she was throwing his way. Naruto. You have to be responsible here. You've been married to Hinata for 12 years, you can't just throw that away because you're unhappy. You have to work it out, or at least try. The blonde spun on her after buttoning his pants. Don't tell me how to treat my marriage, I know what my marriage is. And I know what it's not. I've spent the last 2 years of my marriage watching a robot fold into herself because she's so terrified of disappointing me. I'm so sick of being a robot, so I don't disappoint her. Don't you dare tell me I haven't tried. You don't know a thing about it, Sakura. The Kunoichi just glared, biting her lip in anger, trying not to lash out. You think this is easy for me? To watch you be with Hinata. To see her everywhere I go, and then I get to look into the faces of the children whose father I'm ing. Naruto glowered, nostrils flaring. Sakura Haruno. I'm not letting you go this time. I don't give a shit what you think about my marriage, or how you think I should go about changing it. It's not going to change, I've been trying to make it change for a long time now. Right. Sakura mumbled, zipping up her dress, smoothing it down. Excuse me, he shot back, highly annoyed with her at this point. I said, right, she yelled at him, eyes flashing in the dark. Naruto just observed her for a moment, tapping down his anger, trying to make sense of her attitude. Then it clicked. I get it. You're afraid. She blanched, but didn't say anything towards the statement to argue that it was wrong or that he was wrong. Because he wasn't. You're afraid of being with me. You're afraid of losing control. Why shouldn't you be? You have control over everything in your life right now. Sasuke is never here, so you're never disappointed with anything he does. Sarada always gets good grades. Nothing's ever uprooted for you. Except for me. I make you feel out of control. I always have. And you ran from that. It's true, isn't it? Sakura made to turn away from his accusatory glance, but his hand whipped out and grabbed her upper arm, backing her fully against a tree, holding her there. It's the truth, isn't it? He whispered. The Pinkett felt her eyes filling with tears, the answer laying deep in the depths of her green irises. It's not like that. Not in all actuality. She finally squeaked out, the salty liquid spilling out of her eyelids. Naruto raised an eyebrow, waiting for her elaboration. Naruto. I've never been able to offer you what Hinata could. She has always loved you unconditionally. And stop it, he snapped, shaking her a little bit. I've always let you down. My love towards you has always been there, but never wholesome. It's wavered, and dwindled, changed form, and grew selfish. Ho! I said to stop it. He yelled, pulling her into a hug, crushing her petite form against his. Sakura clamped her mouth shut, letting loose a quivering sob against his shoulder blade. Naruto, she whimpered, sounding almost childlike. Pulling Sakura off of him, he looked into her face, holding her shoulders. I'm going to divorce Sasuke. I made the decision this afternoon. I'm going to draw up papers, and have him look over them when he gets back to the village. Naruto felt like he had been slapped, and suddenly a wave of guilt crashed over him. Is it because of me, oh of us? Sakura shook her head. It's much more than that. I'm weighted down to a man who is never around, and the loneliness drags me so far into depression that I feel like I'm suffocating a lot of the time. I can't live like that. And Sarada, she can't live with it either. It's time to let him go. I know it's the right thing to do. The Hokage lowered his eyes, feeling his heart constrict for the Uchiha man, guilt filling his every pore, the weight of the divorce he had unintentionally elicited falling like a dumbbell on his shoulders. Naruto, it's not your fault. My marriage was broken long before you stepped back into the picture. Sakura comforted him, cupping his cheek, stroking his whiskers. Silence. Are you going to be okay, Sakura? He mumbled, feeling his breath quicken at the pained expression that crossed her features. As okay as I can be, she told him, lower lip trembling, holding back the hot tears that threatened to fall once more. She needed to be strong. Strong. Naruto leaned forward and kissed her gently, running a hand through her tresses, pushing them away from her eyes. Naruto, I just think that Hinata deserves more than this. The things she's done, robotic or not, have been to make you happy. Everything she's ever done is to make you happy. Sakura whispered, pressing her forehead into his, feeling his stare burn into her skin. Silence. And I can't compete with that, Naruto. I can't, Sakura said to him, pulling away from him, watching as he tilted his head down to hide his eyes. Silence. Unbearable silence that left Sakura shaking like a leaf as she moved past him, feeling every pull of her body weigh her down, hold her to the earth to stay here with him. The air was thicker with every step forward, and she suddenly stopped, hearing a thick sob wrench through the air, halting the flow of her blood, her throat closing up with the thickness of tears that ran down her face. Sobbing, she felt a surge of energy overtake her, and she bolted, holding her stomach, branches snagging her clothes, the wind tousling her hair, leaving her sanity to the breeze, and her heart behind with the blonde man that had captured it so many years before. It was better this way. End of flashback. Sakura slammed the door to her room, fumbling with her doctor's coat, fishing the test out of her pocket, her hands shaking so badly, she thought she'd go into shock. Closing her eyes, she drew in shallow breaths that were not calming at all, trying hard not to vomit all over her floor. Okay. She could do this. This time she did vomit. A lot and loudly. Positive. Oh Kami. Sakura hunched over the toilet, spilling the contents of her stomach into the bowl, tears streaming down her face. Why? Why had she forgotten to take her birth control? This was horrible. What the was she going to do? Leaning back when all the contents in her belly had been expelled, Sakura laid back on the coolness of the tile, sweat pouring down her temples. It had been the night at the bar. That was a month ago. So, 5 weeks. 5 weeks pregnant. With Naruto Uzumaki's baby. A married man. And her, a married woman. For now. Of course, there were options. Several in fact. She could give the child up for adoption, but that wasn't a wise option. The Uzumaki and Namikaze gene was strong. Looking at Bolt and Himawari, that was for sure. Bolt looked like the clone of Naruto, and Himawari had his facial shape, eyes, whiskers, and smile. The second option was adoption in a different village. But, that would come to the same consequences. People would instantly know that Naruto was the father. And the third was termination. Sakura blanched roughly, placing a hand over her belly at that thought. No, she couldn't do that. Of course, she was always pro choice, but she didn't know if she could bring herself to do it. Especially to the child of the man that she loved wholeheartedly, even if she couldn't be with him. What was she going to do? Naruto paced in the kitchen, threading his fingers through his hair, watching through the window as Hinata came up the walkway, groceries in hand. He was going to tell her. He had to. Maybe they could move forward. Maybe they couldn't. Either way, she needed to know. Sitting at the table, he drank half-heartedly at his cup of water, feeling his stomach roll with nausea. Naruto-kun, how was your day? Hinata asked him, smiling slightly. The man himself bit his lip, clearing his throat. Hinata, we need to talk, he mumbled, pulling out a seat for her, seeing her eyebrows furrow with question. Nodding, she set the bag down, putting up the cold items, and leaving the rest on the bar, sitting in the seat Naruto pulled out for her. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? She asked him, watching his hands fumble on the table, the words sticking like glue in his windpipe. Hinata. Cutting his words off, he shut his eyes, mustering up the courage to say what he had to. Sighing, he licked his lips. Hinata. I've been having an affair. Her face didn't change, her demeanor stayed the same, eyes growing misty, but no tears falling. Yes, I know, she responded, voice thick with emotions he couldn't place, but had an idea to what they were. Silence. Why you know? He croaked, throat burning. Hinata nodded. Silence. Sakura-chan. Hinata whispered, breaking the silence. Naruto's eyes shot to hers, and this time, the tears did fall. Silence. You called her name the other night. In your sleep, Naruto-kun. She said, tears falling quicker, lips quivering. Naruto painfully shut his eyes, his heart shattering at his wife crying before him due to his infidelity. It wasn't only that time, Naruto-kun. You've harbored love for Sakura-chan since we got married. I remember the day of her wedding, how you didn't want to go. How we left early, with you feigning a horrid headache. Naruto sighed, cursing himself. I'm not a fool, Naruto-kun. The blonde looked at her, reaching for a hand that she didn't pull away. No, I don't think that at all, Hinata. He said, stroking the top of her fingers. Silence. Save for Hinata's sobs. I thought maybe if I kept you as happy as I could, that, you'd forget about her. And it worked for a time, but, I could tell that it wasn't enough. Naruto didn't say anything, feeling his own tears build. I've been so selfish, Naruto-kun. I married you knowing your feelings, knowing that yours for me would never be as strong. But, I loved you. I thought I could love you enough for both of us. Silence. Hinata, do you want to try to pursue our marriage, or do you want to? Naruto started, tapering off the last bit of his sentence, his tears finally falling. The ebony-haired woman smiled, tears trekking down her cheeks. Reaching behind her, she gripped her purse, fumbling through it shakily, finally grasping something. Papers. Laying them down, she shoved them in front of the young Hokage, the last page staring at him, her signature bold. Divorce papers. Naruto-kun. We've had a very good life together, we've had 2 beautiful children. But, if I really search myself, I have to admit that I don't belong with you. Trying to make 2 pieces fit, where they don't fit, just leads to misery. Silence. And I sobs, I don't want you or me to look back in 30 years and only be filled with resentment towards each other. Hinata managed to say, her facade breaking, her soul crying out its anguish, hands stretching across the distance to clamp around his bicep, leaning her weight on him to stay upright. Naruto shoved his face in his hands and sobbed brokenly, feeling his wife wrap her arms around his shoulders and hold him as they both fell apart. It was better this way. Sakura laid in bed that night, feeling more alone and more confused than ever before. What was she going to do? Should she leave the village? Should she tell Sarada? Naruto and Hinata sat at their dining room table, sitting across the way their children, who were staring wide-eyed at them. What's going on? Mom? Dad? Bolt asked. Hinata smiled tentatively, reaching across the way, gripping her son's hand, flicking her eyes towards her husband. Well, Bolt, Himawari. Your mother and I. Well, we've made the conscious decision together, to divorce. Silence. Bolt sprung from his chair, glaring heatedly at the adults who looked on edge enough to snap. What the hell is this? Naruto just took in his son's anger, knowing he deserved it. But Hinata didn't. Bolt, sit down, and do not raise your voice in your mother's presence. The younger male glared hotly. It's because of you, isn't it? Mom never seems happy, and I know it's because of you. Naruto sighed, glancing over at Hinata, who seemed to be getting a little agitated. Bolt, she suddenly snapped, giving her son a withering glare. At that, the younger blonde shut his mouth and sat down, but kept the sour look on his face for the duration of the family meeting. Listen, children, this divorce has nothing to do with blame. Your mother and I just don't make each other happy anymore. But it has nothing to do with either of you. Hinata nodded at Naruto's words. Bolt and Himawari didn't say anything, both of them looking acutely uncomfortable. Silence. Who are we going to live with? Himawari asked her mother, eyes full of confused tears. Well, your father is going to remain in this house, and I'm going to go back to the Hyuga estate, until me and your father can find a suitable house for us to stay in. And I also have found a job in the interrogation unit. I'm going to be helping the interrogation squad with my Byakugan. Naruto didn't miss the hint of excitement that flitted across Hinata's voice. She was happy. She had actually been talking about trying to get on the interrogation squad for a long time. But had held off because she thought Naruto would want her at home. HMPH. That's awesome, Mom, Bolt said to her, cutting through Naruto's thoughts. Yeah, Himawari agreed, pumping a fist. Hinata smiled, feeling a blush touch her cheeks. Silence. Well, do you children have any more questions? Naruto asked the two, watching as his son crossed his arms, looking away from him. Bolt. Hinata started, folding her hand over his once more. He continued to look off into the distance, eyes welling up with tears. It's not your father's fault, Bolt. People grow out of love sometimes, they grow apart. The important thing to remember is that there is no animosity between me and your father. And your life will not be uprooted in any way. Naruto sighed, closing his eyes, feeling the guilt rush over him. It was his fault. Sakura was shuffling through the papers on her desk, finally finding the one that she needed. It was consent forms. Consent forms regarding the clinical trial with the spinal graft. She was nervous. Would the parents go for this? She had explained until she was blue in the face what the trial would consist of. And how violent the surgery could be. All surgery was violent. But spinal surgery was long, and extremely painful when the patient woke up. Not only that, but one wrong hit with the scalpel and the child would be paralyzed. Oh Kami. She needed to sit down, the tumbling in her stomach was doing her no favors. Closing her eyes, she took deep breaths, but they weren't helping at all. Eyes wide, she clamped a hand over her mouth and hurriedly leaned over the trash can beside her desk and vomited up her tea. In the midst of her getting sick, she didn't hear her office door open. "You're sick? That's a drag." A lazy voice hit her ears. Sakura felt the nausea dissipate, and she stood up, seeing Shikamaru stick his hand in his pocket, shuffling around for something. Please don't smoke in my office, Shikamaru." Sakura mumbled, putting her hand against her forehead. The man was staring at her, eyebrow arched in question. "Stomach bug." Sakura waved her hand, feeling the lie bubble up in her throat. "No, I think I ate something bad." Shikamaru just stared at her, ing his head to the side, eyes still glued to her face, which was growing redder and redder under his scrutiny. "What is it that you need?" she asked him, grabbing a tissue, wiping her mouth free of any sickness that may still be on her face. I'm not sure if you've heard that Naruto and Hinata have filed divorce papers." Sakura felt her heart almost stop, eyes closing, feeling the rage for the Uzumaki start to climb. She would kill him. Instead, she plastered a sad look on her face and sighed. "I didn't hear. I'm sure it has spread like wildfire around the village." Shikamaru nodded. "It's not a huge deal. The council will only care if Naruto has embarrassed himself or the village in any way. They're filing on irreconcilable differences." Sakura nodded, rubbing her temples. "Silence. Sakura." Shikamaru started, his eyes darting around the room, sighing heavily, moving to sit in the chair opposite her desk. Narrowly staring at her, he folded his arms across his chest, closing his eyes in what seemed like annoyance. "I know about you and Naruto." Sakura winced, lowering herself back into her chair, heart beating rapidly against her bone. There was no point in lying, Shikamaru wasn't stupid. And she was tired of lying. "I'm not judging you. Really. I know how unhappy Naruto was, and how unhappy he has been for almost the last 5 years of his life." Sakura just stared into the distance, listening to Shikamaru talk to her. "But, if the village were to find out that he had an affair with you, while him and Hinata were still married, I don't know how the council would react. They'd probably pull your funding, and try to knock Naruto out of the Hokage's seat. Especially since Hinata is part of one of the most powerful clans in the village." Sakura felt ill again, but this time, within her heart. Silence. Shikamaru looked the Pinkett over, watching her turn green in the face once more. Sakura felt the bile ran up her throat before she could stop it, and in a second she was leaning over the trash, vomiting again. Oh God. This morning sickness was going to kill her. Shikamaru accessed her, feeling a strange inkling in the pit of his stomach, but decided to keep that to himself. "Anyway, I hope you feel better. And I think it's best if you kept your distance from Naruto until the rumor mill dies down. That's all I really came here to say." The Kunyachi couldn't help but glare at him, nodding viciously, shooing him out of her office with a tense wave of her hand. After he had left, Sakura laid her head in her hands, feeling the nausea roll through her. Kami. It was so different with Sarada. She was almost never sick with her first child. Closing her eyes, Sakura felt her exhaustion catch up with her, and before she could try to tug her eyelids back open, sleep was taking her. Naruto sat in his office, tapping his fingers on the wood of his desk, his mind going a mile a minute. Telling his kids hadn't been all that difficult, but he knew Bolt blamed him. As he should. It was his fault, mainly. However, the divorce was mutual. Hinata had revealed to him that she had been unhappy for a while as well, but was too afraid to tell him. Naruto knew she didn't like being inside the house all the time. And she had a driving urge to prove to her father that she could stand on her own 2 feet, and that she could do the name of Hyuga proud. That's all she had ever wanted. To be strong, And a great kunyuchi. Naruto opened his eyes, rubbing his temples that were starting to throb in pain, the headache that he had tried pushing back, crashing over him with a vengeance. Peace and quiet didn't last long around here. His door opened, and in walked Shikamaru. A worried expression on his face. Leaning back in his chair, Naruto cupped the nape of his neck in his hands, rolling his shoulders slowly, trying to push some of the pressure off his brain into his shoulders. It didn't help. What's wrong? He asked the other man, the Nara male standing there with his arms folded tersely across his chest. Silence. Naruto. I know about you and Sakura. Silence. The blonde Hokage felt like he had been punched and he bit his lip, standing up from his chair to face the window, staring at the pedestrians and playing children down below. Silence. Finally, Naruto took a breath, and tilted his head towards his advisor. How? Shikamaru rolled his eyes, huffing at the Hokage's ignorance. Well, for starters, at the dinner party, you were glowering at one of Sakura's male medical assistants. Naruto winced, giving him that one. He was kind of obvious. And whenever the hospital is mentioned you perk up, asking the person a million questions regarding the trial, or how Sakura is doing on the trial. Etc., etc. Should I go on? The blonde man turned, shooting a glare at the other man who was too smart for his own good. No, I think I got the point. Are you going to judge me? Scold me for being a tactless adulterer? Shikamaru rubbed his chin, shaking his head. No, neither. I know you weren't happy with Hinata. And she wasn't happy with you. Low blow. Thanks for the reminder, Shikamaru. Naruto grumbled. The advisor sighed, rubbing his own temples now. I didn't mean it like that. I understand that unhappiness and loneliness can drive us to do many out of character things. I have no right to judge you. None at all, actually. He mumbled, looking at the ground. The blonde caught onto something that the other man wasn't saying, but not only that. The aura around his friend was familiar, almost stifling in its adequacy towards how he himself had felt not too long before now, his mind reeling from coming to terms with his own feelings towards Sakura. Oh, who is it? Naruto murmured, watching as Shikamaru grimaced. Silence. Okay. Easier question then, do I know her? At that question, dark eyes moved up to clash with his blue ones, and the darker brow arched, his head nodding softly. Trying to turn the situation into a lighter one, Naruto grinned. It isn't Sakura, is it? Shikamaru smirked, shaking his head. No, but it's someone she's close to. Ah, there it is. The two men didn't say anything else, the silence of the room suffocating them, gripping them and holding them, one main question on both of their minds. Why? Sakura sat on her bed, listening to the silence of the house, the time now approaching 10 o'clock. Sarada was sleeping, and Sakura had spent the last 3 hours researching, jotting down a variety of notes that she would need tomorrow, meeting with her team to conduct a graph, and meet with Kiona's parents. In the midst of her reading over some notes in her room, she heard a small rap at her bedroom window. Frowning, Sakura ran her fingers through her hair, walking over, moving the blinds back to look outside. Blue eyes met hers, and she instantly felt her eyebrow twitch in annoyance. Naruto. Scowling, Sakura gripped the bottom of the panel, forcing it up. You know, there is a front entrance. She snapped at him, moving back so he could come in. The blonde rubbed the back of his neck, looking sheepish. I wasn't sure if I should do that, considering Sarada. I know she might be asleep, and didn't want to chance waking her up. Sakura only sighed, turning away from him. Naruto watched her as she sat on the bed, folding her forehead in her hand. What's wrong? He murmured, moving to stand in front of her, setting his bandaged hand on her shoulder. Silence. Well, It's never a great feeling knowing you basically broke up a marriage, Naruto. Sakura said, sending him a small glare. Naruto sighed, sitting beside her, leaning his forearms on his knees. Silence. I thought you were going to try to work things out with her. Sakura said, sounding distant and tired. It isn't that simple, Sakura. I had to tell her what was going on. I had to be honest. But, apparently, I wasn't the only one who was unhappy, which is what I assumed to begin with. Sakura stood up suddenly, crossing her arms. Still, Naruto, you could have tried. I mean, you've been with her for the last 13, almost 14 years. The blonde felt his eyebrow twitch in annoyance, not appreciating her lecture. As I said, Sakura, we had both been unhappy for many years. We almost never saw each other. Our love felt like a duty. A cold partnership we were forced to stay in because of our children. That's not how a marriage should be. The Pinkett huffed, gripping her hair now, feeling her eyes fill with tears. She must hate me. Sakura whimpered, lower lip trembling. Naruto shook his head, getting up now to enfold her in his arms. Hey, no, she doesn't hate you, Sakura. She had a hunch for a long time. That's what she told me. Sakura looked at him in question. Naruto sighed, gripping her hand gently, steering her to sit on the bed, standing in front of her. Listen, Sakura. I haven't exactly been secretive about my unhappiness towards your marriage. The other day of your wedding, I faked a really bad headache to leave. During the ceremony, I was gripping Hinata's hand so hard, I thought I had broken one of her fingers. And the pain afterwards, man, it was worse than any knife wound I had ever gotten. Sakura sniffled, running her thumb over his knuckles, watching as he kneeled before her. That feeling, Kami, that feeling never went away. Don't get me wrong, I was good at putting on a fake facade, and pretending like everything was okay, and that I was fine with seeing you love Sasuke, and have his child. But, I think it truly clicked after the Shin incident, and after Sasuke left that. I was bitter. Silence. Naruto rubbed his temples, leaning back on his haunches. Nothing I did took that feeling away. Just nothing. I felt so guilty for not speaking up about my feelings before, guilty for not telling you how important you were to me. And not in riddles, or mixed words. The whole truth. Sakura smiled at him, squeezing his fingers now, wiping her nose with her free hand, feeling hot tears start to tread down her cheeks. Hey, Naruto whispered, thumbing away the liquid streaking down her face, leaning in to give her forehead a kiss, closing his eyes, relishing in her warmth. Silence. Where is she now? Sakura asked him as he drew back from her. She's staying at the Hyuga estate with the kids. We have yet to draw up a schedule with the children, but she's moved out. He said, feeling a prickle of sadness hit him that showed on his face. Sakura cupped his cheek, bringing his face to hers, nuzzling his cheek, closing her eyes as she felt his whiskers brush against her soft skin. It'll be all right, Naruto. She whispered, feeling his shoulders hunch, and shake with the little sobs that left his throat. He was hurting. She was hurting for him. Everything will work itself out. After a few minutes of consoling Naruto, Sakura closed her eyes, taking a big breath in. Now was the time. Reaching for his hand, Sakura hesitated for a second, but took another big breath, trying to find her calm. How would he react? Would he be angry? Disappointed? Only one way to find out. Gripping his fingers, Sakura placed his hand on her stomach, meeting his eyes with hers, saying nothing. Hopefully, he'd pick it up on his own. Naruto felt his eyes widen, a little light bulb going off in his head. Oh Kami, he whispered, his hand splaying out fully against her belly, his fingers trembling. Sakura smiled slightly, Nodding. Naruto put his other hand on her stomach, both palms laying flat against her. Another pup. Huh, yes, another pup. Naruto confirmed to Kurama. Nicely done, whelp. Naruto rolled his eyes at that, closing them, wrapping his arms around Sakura's torso, laying his cheek against the swell of her belly, making her tense up, then relax a second later. Why you're not angry? She asked, voice low. Naruto pulled back quickly, eyebrows almost raised to his hairline. Are you crazy? I would never and could never be angry over this. Sakura just shrugged. Well, it's not exactly the best time, Naruto. I still need to tell Sasuke about everything. And I have no idea when I'll see him next. The young Hokage nodded, his palms still on her stomach. Are you afraid of his reaction? I can be there when you tell him, if you'd like me to be. He offered, blue eyes watching her. Sakura sighed and shook her head. No, I think it's better if I did it. Plus, it would make no sense for him to act out, considering the fact that he's never here. At that statement, she pushed Naruto's hands away from her, standing up, moving towards the window, arms crossed, an upset look on her face. Sakura. Silence. I just can't believe. I wasted 13 years in this marriage. The only good thing to come of it was Sarada. And, Okami Naruto, I feel so bad sometimes, she never sees Sasuke. I'm so afraid it's going to make her so bitter, so angry, not only at him, but at me as well. What if she thinks I haven't done enough to keep him here? Or, that I haven't done enough to get him back here? She had to stop crying, feeling a thick lump start to make its way up her throat. Sakura. Naruto called out, his voice firm. The Kunoichi turned to face him halfway, watching as he made his way to her. Look at me, Sakura. He said, turning her, seeing her green eyes look to the side, not wanting to show her tears to him again. Naruto gripped one of her hands, turning it upside down, palm up. Bringing it up, he placed his lips against her skin, feeling her inhale a sharp breath at his action. Pulling back, Naruto continued to stroke her flesh. Listen to me, Sakura Haruno. He started, keeping his eyes locked with hers. Silence. You are not to blame for Sasuke's faults. Neither of you are. Sarada is highly intelligent, and she doesn't blame you for anything. Sakura felt her heart constrict at his words, her lower lip trembling. Naruto sighed softly, wrapping his arms around her, pulling her frame against his chest. Sakura melted against him, shoving her nose in the crook of his neck, inhaling his scent. He always smelled like sandalwood. She loved it. Sakura whimpered, finding him absolutely intoxicating, his smell overwhelming her senses, making her knees tremble. Darting her tongue out, Sakura licked a small patch of exposed skin on his neck, ing lightly on the spot, hearing the man in question gasp a little bit, not expecting her to do that. Feeling her belly start to burn, Sakura pulled back and melded her lips with his, hands moving up to tangle in his hair, pulling lightly at the blonde tresses. Naruto groaned, gripping her hips, pulling her flush against his front, allowing her to feel what she was doing to him. Gasping, Sakura felt the press of his hardening manhood against her pelvis. Reaching down, she grasped him through his pants, watching his face as his eyes closed in pleasure. Wasting no time, Sakura plucked at the buttons on his pants, fingers unzipping him, pushing at the fabric, hearing it hit the floor. A couple minutes later, they were both, laying side by side, facing each other, kissing each other everywhere. Sakura had turned out the light, keeping only the bedside lamp on, making sure the door was locked, twice. She liked watching Naruto under this lighting. His bronzed skin glowed, along with the yellow of his hair, making him look almost like a setting sun. He was a beautiful man. She loved him so much. Leaning forward once again, she claimed his lips, running her hand down, across his pectorals, to grab his manhood, stroking it lightly, relishing in the tight moans that came out of his mouth. Naruto bucked against her, feeling pleasure shoot through his stomach. Groaning, the blonde grabbed Sakura's hand, halting her movements, shoving her arm to her side. Sakura whimpered, feeling him turn her on her right-hand side, his arousal pushing into her butt cheeks, making her moan loudly. Naruto smirked, covering her mouth, leaning his mouth down to whisper in her ear. "You must be quiet, Sakura. We didn't put up a silencing jutsu. Don't want to wake Sarada, do you?" The pinkett felt her womanhood throb, wanting him to touch her. Please. She moaned quietly, feeling his hand wrap around her thigh and pull it back over his hip, his erection lining at her entrance. "What do you want, Sakura?" he asked her, biting her earlobe, licking her neck. "You," she answered, pressing her hips back. Naruto's hand left her thigh, now making a path to close over her swelling belly. The feel of him touching something they had created doing exactly this made him throb. "She's ripe with your pup, whelp," Naruto growled, sinking his teeth into the juncture of her neck, hearing her take in a sharp breath. "You never staked your claim on the other woman. If you intend to do this properly, you'll need me for this part." A dark chuckle broke through then, and Naruto felt his eyes reddening, teeth elongating. "Sakura," he whispered, kissing down her back, tongue making fiery trails on her skin. The woman in question was a panting mess, her thighs trembling, womanhood drenched. Oh Kami, she needed him. Naruto felt the heat swirl within his belly, lips trailing to her neck again, stopping at the crook of her neck, his nose shoving into her flesh, smelling the life coursing through her. Her scent drove him crazy, she smelled just like her name. Sakura blossoms. But now, there was a spicy nip to her, due to the life swelling within her belly. His baby. His child. And at that thought, Naruto licked the spot he intended to mark. "Sakura," he said again, the woman in question arching against him. "Please," she begged, arching her hips back, needing him inside of her. "Right now. This is going to hurt," he warned, his left hand wandering low to thumb at her, a little squeal falling from her lips. Aligning himself at her entrance, he pushed the head through, feeling her walls flutter on him. Going back to her neck, Naruto licked at the spot one more time, finally laying his fangs against her hot skin, starting to clamp down. As his fangs slid through her flesh, his manhood seared her opening, and Sakura arched her back, opening her mouth to scream. Naruto was quicker though, his hand clapping over her lips as his hips thrust into hers, quivering brushing his forearm, mouthing at her bite. Sakura herself was wrapped up in pleasurable pain that left her head reeling, and she tried to hold on to her surroundings, but they were fading out with the intensity of what he was doing. "Oh Kami. Naruto, give her some of my chakra." What? Naruto tried to speak, the pleasure rippling through his body. "Do it. You need someone to pass me along to, should something happen to you." "I can't do that. Not to my child. Not like my father did. It's different now, there's a resonance between us. A bond. Your child won't suffer as you did. Do it. Do it now." Naruto came back to the present, his hips still driving sharply into Sakura, her muffled moans and whimpers hitting his ears. Going back to the bite mark, Naruto moved his mouth over it, fangs elongating again, sinking back into it, causing Sakura to arch her neck. Naruto had to close his eyes, feeling her walls flutter on his. Did this feel good for her? He wasn't sure. Teeth in her flesh, he channeled his chakra up and through the bite, pumping in a little bit, then drawing back, his tongue swirling over the bleeding wound. Sakura felt heat course through her blood and she came instantly, hands weaving in the quilt beneath her, toes curling, legs widening, the back of her hand muffling her sounds. Naruto tasted her blood on his tongue, his fangs going back to their original state, eyes fading back to blue. She was coming around him, and Naruto threw his head back, running his hand back over her belly, his swelling and releasing, making him groan loudly, shoving his face into her back, silencing his guttural noises. They both came down from their high, and Sakura winced, hand reaching up to fiddle with the mark he left on her shoulder. She had an inkling to what he had done, but was a little afraid to ask. Should she be angry? Naruto, why did you bite me? She whispered. The blonde turned her face to him, his features serious, almost stoic. Sakura. Kurama chose this. He must have a host, in case something happens to me. If he doesn't, he will jump around to other innocent children, and they'll go through the same thing I did. Nothing will happen to our son or daughter while I'm alive. However, if I die, Kurama will be their new host. A seal will show instantly, and they'll have full control over him. The Uzumakis must always be in control of the nine tails. Sakura bit her lip, hand wandering to the mark again. Do you understand? Please don't be upset. Naruto mumbled, pushing her forehead against his. I'm not upset. I don't want our child to be hunted down for the nine tails. Naruto smiled, stroking her hair. Well, I don't intend to go anywhere anytime soon. Our child will have me. Chances are they'll be adults before I die. And at that point, they'll know full well how to handle threats against them regarding Kurama. But, for now, there is peace. Sakura sighed, but nodded. Reaching low, she rubbed her stomach. Naruto, will our child have whiskers? The Hokage looked at her, and smiled a fox-like grin. Yes, probably. Bolt and Himawari have them. But, our child will have more prominent ones, 3 on each cheek. Sakura nodded, smiling, looping her leg around his hip, snuggling closer, pressing her lips softly into his. I've always wondered what those whiskers would feel like between my thighs. How they would tickle my legs. Or, how they'd feel against my entrance. Naruto growled a little bit, feeling his stir at her words.